actually finding in the front. So where do we sit now? So we've replaced obviously the leaf springs, the shocks. We've checked the drums. The drums were already bad. They were at full capacity. Yeah. So replacing the drums, the shoes, the wheel cylinder,
and the bearings.
And the bearings.
And with the bearings, we had to replace the side shaft seal, and then we saw that the
side
side shaft
seal
is worn out. So we.
And that's pitted from the other seal as well, just with muck getting in there, it causes that pitting.
The seal's got a spring at the back.
Yeah.
That actually pushes onto that side shaft, and that where that pressure point is, that's where it starts wearing it out.
That's where it wears it.
Plastic is wearing out metal.
We've got the donkey's rear side shaft, left-hand side shaft, so it's the longer one. And you can see where the side shaft seal actually worn the side shaft. So unfortunately, this whole shaft is in perfect condition, needs to be replaced due to this small mark that we've got on here, where the new seal actually won't be able to seal. And what happened is the diff oil washed out all the grease, and that's going to happen again if you leave this side shaft in there.
Back at Terrain Tamer this morning. Yesterday we finished up on the rear. So the new parabolic leaf springs are in, the new shocks are in, the new bearings are in, the new heavy duty seals are in. And we've just got to do the sway bar now. We're replacing the bushes on those. And then we're going to start on the front. So front we're doing the coils. I'm not sure if we're putting in the heavy duty coils. I don't have a winch at the moment. Terrain Tamer are quite specific in catering for the exact weight and requirements of what the vehicle currently weighs or what you are going to be packing in it. Let's see what today holds. Here we go. Some pretty scary stuff we're actually finding in the front. Things you wouldn't often check on a trip, things unless you can actually lift your vehicle that you wouldn't find necessarily. Under pressure, the steering knuckle arm is quite stiff. It's staying in place, but once we've lifted the vehicle, these bolts underneath the steering knuckle arm, have a look at that. They finger loose. If we wiggle it, you can see the whole arm is loose. Maybe another 100 k's on corrugated road, who knows, maybe 10. This would have all come off and who knows what would have happened. Just something to check going forward. Now that I know these things do come loose easily, it's definitely going to be something that's on my checklist going forward. Might as well just, take the bolt out. It's not holding anything. Nicky from Terrain Tamer, he likes doing this to me. He does stuff in the car and then I know something's horribly wrong when he says, no, go get your camera and come and look at this. So before I've seen it, I haven't seen what's wrong yet. I'm tentatively worried about what I'm going to see on this side of the car. What am I going to see?
Lots of rust and water ingestion.
Oh shit. So
that's a good side still.
Inside the ball joint and outside the ball joint, lots and lots of rust. You would have thought the grease would have protected that.
It did, to a point.
Have a look at this.
Grease coming over here. Look at the rust sitting there.
Look at all that rust.
Good knuckle.
Like I said, when he says, bring your camera and come film this, you know there's stuff like that. And this apparently is the good side. You said, eh?
Yeah, that's a good side because this side got oil in it, so you're not going to see it like so much. But basically the same happened this side, and the seal couldn't handle it no more.
So this side we can't see yet because it's not clean, but it's probably going to be the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so I showed you what the knuckles looked like once we pulled them apart with all the rust and everything that was in there and the water that had got in. What we actually found is the seals had been put on incorrectly. The rubber fitment's supposed to go on first and then the seal on top of that. They were actually put on the other way round and backwards. So that didn't help. That probably was where the water ingress came from. The guys have now cleaned up the knuckle. I mean, from going from this to now this, there's literally no comparison to what it looks like now and what it looked like previously. This, we're actually going to build it from the inside out now. So the coils will come off, the suspension will come off, we're going to change them. Then the caster correction bushes will go on. We're going to take this one off, press the old bushes out, press the new bushes in. Getting there slowly but surely, well not actually slowly but surely, we're getting there quite quickly. Also for a little bit more protection, we're going to put the knuckle protectors on. Essentially what it is a cover that goes over the knuckle just to protect it that little bit more against the elements.
Soft, but they're not. It's time to replace them. It's not.
We've reached the point of the installation where the front suspension is now going in. Nikki, are you happy? Happy? Marinas, are you happy? So we've put the coils in already. Now it's time to get the actual shocks themselves in. Why do you actually compress them first?
We bleed them. So because there's air inside when they travel like this.
Yeah.
There's sometimes air coming in the inner tube. So it's a twin tube shock. So we've got an inner tube with an external tube, and then there's a lot of times air in there. So we just bleed them 3 or 4 times. You just compress them completely, and then all the air is out. So
Okay. Because essentially they'll never compress fully again.
yeah.
With the Terrain Tamer suspension upgrade, what these guys do, which all places that lift a vehicle, you should be changing your caster correction bushes. I've had my suspension lifted previous to this, and not a mention of correction bushes. We're actually going to press out the old, and then we're going to stick in the new ones. Got it. The left side is now done. we're just busy doing the right hand side. We've repacked the CVs, greased them all up, everything's going back on. And what Nikki's doing right now is just marking all the bolts. So Nikki, why are you marking the bolts?
So that I know I've tightened them, and to check if they don't come loose, then the mark will turn from the original mark where it was, and then you know that bolt is becoming loose and you need to tighten it up again.
Also, like Nikki was saying to me, which I thought was pretty good advice, is if you ever check underneath your car and you find a bolt that isn't dusty and everything else is dusty, the reason the bolt isn't dusty is it's moving and the dust is coming off. So that's something you need to look at and tighten. This is a sure way of checking that, is you literally put marks on the bolts, and then if they shift, you know immediately if they've moved. So Donkey is just about done. We've replaced quite a few parts. The initial idea behind coming here was to change the suspension. So changing Donkey from a very heavy old leaf pack to the new parabolic suspension from Terrain Tamer. And what we ended up doing is, because Terrain Tamer is quite meticulous about their brand and the products they sell, obviously they want to ensure that the parts will actually last their maximum lifespan. And what we found is, as we pulled little bits and pieces apart, that there was other bits and pieces that needed to be replaced, and so we ended up with quite a bit more than just the suspension being replaced. So this is Marinus from Terrain Tamer in Cape Town. Thank you for all of this on the Donkey. Really appreciate it.
Quite a few parts that we did for you.
Yeah, it's looking really good. So I think let's start with what we initially were here to do, was to change Donkey from normal suspension to a parabolic suspension. Now, parabolic suspension, can you give us an idea of what parabolic suspension is and why it's better or different to standard leaf springs?
Yeah. So you'll see with the parabolics, you've got the heavy duty parabolics, so 500 to 700 kilogram parabolics in, way less leaves in there. So you'll see the design of the leaf is totally different than a standard one. Yeah. There's also gaps between the leaves, so there's no inner leaf friction.
Yeah, so, compared to my other one. So just so you guys know as well, I've gone from 11 leaf springs to 4. Yeah. So quite a big difference.
Yeah. So there's a big weight difference as well. I think we saved just on the leaf springs themselves 46 kilograms.
Yes, 46 kilos in total.
Yeah, in total. So it's a big difference. So when leaf springs was originally designed, there weren't any shock absorbers. So normal leaf spring was the inner leaf friction was there to absorb the shock. So in the meantime, we've went way up with the shock absorber technology and all of that, and you don't need that inner leaf friction anymore. So you'll see there's no leaf contact basically, and where they do touch each other, we've put an anti-friction pad in there, a high modular plastic that we put in there to assist with the friction there and so on, so that it slides more. So with a normal leaf pack, you need to overcome all that friction before it starts moving. Okay. And then to move, it's very difficult because of the thick leaf pack. Yeah. So we're
obviously creating a lot of heat.
And a lot of heat and a lot of friction and all of that. Where with the parabolics, you don't have all of that friction. You take the friction out. The way that the leaf reacts to weight and to input from the road are totally different. So with a normal set of leaves, when you drive over like corrugation and so on, they hardly move. All of that is in the tire because of being so heavy and being so difficult to start moving.
It's kind of like playing like a catch up, you know, something happens and the leaf pack's actually got to try and catch up to what it's almost reacting to, where it's a slower reaction kind of thing.
Yeah. So with the parabolics, you don't have all of that friction that you need to overcome. You don't have all of that weight that needs to move up and down. So all of these smaller bumps that you used to feel through the whole chassis, it actually smooths that out because they already start moving and they already start absorbing that. Once you start loading like the donkey is loaded, it doesn't sag as much as a normal leaf pack.
We've shaved weight off. I mean, honestly, we've shaved weight off. So he's not as fat as he used to be. He's a slim donkey now.
Nice and lean.
So now the leaf packs themselves, or the parabolic leaf springs themselves, you change all the bracketry. So it's U-bolts, all the brackets. What's the reason behind changing all the bracketry?
Yeah. So on your shackles and your pins and so on, you will see your old pins are actually not greasable. So we changed them to greasable pins and shackles, just because it's lubricating, but also now it's cleanable. So every time after a trip, you'll put in new grease, pushes out all the water and dust that went in there, and it actually cleans the whole system, so it's much better. On U-bolts, because you torque them so tight and the whole vehicle is basically hanging on the U-bolts, every time we change the leaf spring or we loosen those, we'll replace them.
And that comes as part of the kit?
That comes part of the suspension kit. So the suspension kit is a complete kit. When you order a suspension kit from us, you get the whole kit. And from steering dampener, caster correction bushes, your shock absorbers, your coils, your leaf springs, your U-bolts, your pins, your shackles, your suspension bushes, the shackle bushes, pin bushes, everything is included in the suspension kit.
And that's one thing that's actually quite important to point out, is the caster correction bushes.
Yeah.
So I'd assumed that the previous installation actually included the caster correction, and what we found is that my prop shaft was actually sitting a little bit at an angle because the caster correction hadn't been done.
Yeah.
You know, how necessary is it to do the caster correction? On what sort of lift are you looking at caster correction no longer becomes an option, it's now a necessity?
As soon as you go 2 inches and higher, you need to look at caster correction. So basically what happens is, as soon as you drop the diff because you're raising the vehicle, the angle changes on the diff itself. You just need to
correct it.
Correct that. So this is also your high-speed stability. The car not wandering over the road, as you see a lot of times when you're raising the suspension, you will feel it does affect your handling on your vehicle. Okay. Where if you do the caster correction, it takes that out. So.
Okay. And then speaking of swaying across the road, I mean, it only seems reasonable to now go to the sway bars. I mean, you guys changed the bracketry on the sway bars, you changed the bushes on the sway bars. What's different with your bushes on the sway bars to any other bush? Like, I can go to Toyota and buy a new bush for my sway bars. What is the difference with the Terrain Tamer bush?
So you'll see in the rear we used again natural rubber bushes that corrugation and so on. Your lifespan will be a bit shorter than a guy using his vehicle basically in town,
daily commute kind of
daily commute type thing and so on. So they are high quality. So we make sure that we don't just get any bush. We make sure that it's a good quality rubber that we use. And as I said, on the synthetic elastomer bushes, they are very, very good. Much better than your urethane that most of the guys will use.
Obviously now we had to change the shocks themselves. You don't notice your vehicle getting cracked. So it's like you don't notice the soles of your shoes getting thinner. You wouldn't notice your drive getting worse.
So you are getting used to the bad shocks, but it's digressing over a period of time. So as soon as you take them out and you put in new ones, then you'll feel the change. But again, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, you'll probably have to change them again because that's the lifespan of a shock.
And my shocks were pretty much worn, and I didn't really feel the impact on myself. We've obviously changed them to the Terrain Tamer shocks.
Yes.
What's the difference between the shocks that we've now got and the previous shocks I had?
So you already had not heavy duty but off-road shocks in your vehicle. So Terrain Tamer also off-road vehicle, a bigger bore, larger volume of oil than your standard shock that you'll get from the OE manufacturer or so. We just went and we said, okay, but the main seal on the shaft, we manufacture those in Japan. So it's especially manufactured for us to make sure, because if that seal goes, then basically your shock's gone. So we make sure that that's a high quality seal, and then we're also using a different type of oil than what other manufacturers will use that can handle a higher temperature. Because your shocks, if you drive long distances on corrugation and so on, they do get so hot that you can't touch them.
Yes.
And that's the main thing. All of that energy that builds up in your, it basically absorbs all the energy from your suspension, and that energy it transfers into heat, and that heat needs to go somewhere.
And a hot shock is less effective.
So as soon as your what's called cavitation, so the oil starts making bubbles, then the shock doesn't work as it should. So then it's basically like it's running in air.
Okay.
So you want to prevent your oil in your shock to start cavitating or to start foaming.
Once we lifted the vehicle up, what we didn't notice initially, I mean, you know, standard bearing test, kind of wiggle your wheel, see if the bearing moves, bearings are okay. That's what we assumed with Donkey, bearings are okay because there was no play in the wheel at all. This, I'm talking front and rear. Once we'd lifted the vehicle and taken the pressure off, we found that the bearings were actually, they weren't worn, they were end of life. They were beyond end of life, to be honest. We've gone with the Terrain Tamer, the heavy duty bearings. Again, what makes Terrain Tamer bearings different to standard bearings?
No. It was especially designed and manufactured for Terrain Tamer, so they will last 2 to 3 times longer in a normal situation. When you do get water or dirt or whatever in there, they will last 10 times longer than a standard bearing. Again, it's not that it can get water and then it can last for another 10 years or whatever. It is when a normal bearing would have broken, you can still travel 10 times further than that, but it will still need to be changed. In a normal situation, if you make sure that your seals, and we've got the heavy duty seal that we put in place, if you keep it clean and you make sure there's no water, dirt coming in, it will last you 2-3 times longer than a standard wheel bearing will last. It doesn't help you use the best bearings in the world, but you use crappy grease or you don't grease it properly. You need to make sure, and through Flash Loop we do manufacture very good high temperature grease. Working temperatures between 25 and 175 degrees Celsius. So,
which is decent.
And that 175 degrees Celsius is quite decent for wheel bearing.
The seals are obviously super important when it comes to keeping all that rubbish out of the bearing. And you guys have now put in the heavy duty seals for me as well.
So this is a labyrinth type seal. So you'll see it runs on itself. So it doesn't matter what condition your hub is or your shaft is, the seal will run on itself. So it also makes sure that instead of just 1 or 2 sealing surfaces, it's got now 4 sealing surfaces. Because that seal is the barrier between your very nice new wheel bearings and all the elements, the water, the dust and sand and everything that wants to get in there. And you've traveled Botswana and all of these places going through water and so on. That's the seal that needs to keep all of that dirt and everything out to make sure that your wheel bearings last much longer.
Moving on to now just some of the other Terrain Tamer products that we're going to be using in the Donkey. And we've obviously drained all the oil out of the diffs and the gearbox and the transfer case and all the rest of that. As opposed to just using standard oils that go into them, obviously, you know, there's no harm in it, but you guys make a range of products, the Flash Loop product, which is a better agent to add to them. As opposed to just the standard oils, which are fine, you know, why not add an additive to something to improve its performance?
Yeah, so we've got a wide range on Flash Loop. We started with the valve saver and then moved on to other additives. With your engine oil and diff oil and gearbox and transfer and so on, we're going to use the oil stabilizer. So this was designed especially to assist your oil sticking longer onto your components. Okay. So in your diff and in your gearbox and everywhere and in your engine, it just keeps that little layer of oil on the components. So if you start in the morning, it's not a cold start, if you can say it like that.
It's already got some lube on it.
It's already got some lube on it. So it also doesn't thicken the oil. So there's a lot of guys adding things to thicken the oil to make it more viscous so that it stays long on the components. We actually just added basically a formula to make it stick longer on the parts without thickening the oil. Very nice. You can use it, as I said, from all your diffs, all your gearbox, transfer case, engine, any oil component, you can use that. All the vehicles you use a high percentage. It's normally one bottle, one liter of additive on 3 or 4 liters of standard oil.
And then I think one that I've been testing out that we know works is this one. So I've been using the diesel conditioner. Now all of you guys know in the last video we did the Donkey walk around and I said to you, how heavy is the Donkey on fuel? Well, the Donkey's heavy. What this has done, I may have added a little bit too much. You're supposed to add, I think it's 0.9.
1 milliliter per liter of fuel.
Yeah, I kind of added about half a 250 ml bottle by mistake. I thought it was going to be thick like syrup, and it wasn't. It came out. I kind of poured it and squeezed it, and half the bottle went in. This, I can say, decreased my fuel consumption quite considerably. I haven't done 2 full tank tests yet, but on the 1 tank, I'm now reaching just over 600 k's on a tank, which going from the lower sort of, or higher 400s to the low 500s, it's basically 100 k's extra for me on a tank, which is a massive increase.
So we don't sell it as a way of increasing your fuel, although it does increase. Yeah, it does increase your fuel, but it basically lubricates your whole diesel system, and it cleans your injectors. It makes sure that everything is running, lubricates the diesel pump, all of that.
We're now discussing the actual braking system, the high performance discs themselves. So this is the actual disc. Now, when we were chatting about putting them in the vehicle, you actually mentioned something quite interesting to me, which was from the mining industry.
Yeah, so we developed these with the mines in Australia. So they used to use the OE braking systems and components in Australia. And because they're working permanently with the vehicles in a slurry, they had to replace the pads every 5 days.
Yeah.
And if they didn't replace it in 5 days, after 7 days they had to replace the rotors and the pads. They came to us saying, no, there's quite a lot of downtime. Can't we as Terrain Tamer? So we developed these discs and our ceramic pads. So with this change, they went from 5 days to 3 months.
That's impressive.
It's a lot better, less downtime, although you're also getting an improvement in braking. It's not that we just made it harder and to last longer. You actually gain in braking and in longevity of the components.
It's been a while since the donkey's moved, and this is his first little test drive on the new suspension. I'm not driving it. I'm going to wait until the wheel alignment and everything's done, and then once that's done, I'll give it a bash. I want everything to feel and be like 100% before jump in the drivers. So donkey, haven't heard him start in a while, but there he goes. Remember, you break it to buy it, eh?
Let's put it off. I'll buy it.
Baby.
What's my second lap?
There's the donkey going for his first test after some wheel alignment. Pretty excited. So one of the things with doing wheel alignment is it needs to be done correctly. So what I'd recommend is you take it to somebody that actually knows that you do 4x4ing and what we put the vehicles through. It's always going to work out better for you, because as we found with the previous setup, the rack ends were actually worn, wheel alignment was done, and they didn't even pick that up. So rather take it to someone that actually that knows that you 4x4, that knows that they know their vehicles as well, and they'll probably check all that for you in a normal standard wheel alignment, which most places should but won't, or don't, which we found out from the last wheel alignment issue. Okay, start of a new trip. The aim and intention of this trip is to carry on the series of the Terrain Tamer products. So you guys have seen the installation videos. This one is now the product testing video. So basically we're heading into the Tankwa, which, let's go with, it's South Africa's mini Outback.